All right, welcome everybody. This is Mr. Martinez. I just want to share a little art history before we continue on today. What we've been focusing on is a lot of contemporary artwork, which is the current era that we live in, a current movement. But before all that came quite a few other movements that really led up to this point. So why is this important? You have to know your building blocks, your foundation. You have to understand where art came from to be able to move forward. Otherwise, you might create something that you think is entirely unique, entirely new and refreshing, but it may have in fact been done 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And you do see a lot of that, a lot of repetition. Even I am guilty of creating some stuff that's been seen before, and I want you to avoid that. So we're going to start with the very first of those stages. We call this the Stone Age. Stone Age was a long time ago. Any guesses to when the Stone Age was? Think 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago? If that's your guess, you could guess a little older, because the Stone Age is believed to have happened about 40,000, maybe 30,000 years ago. And the evidence of that is the Lascaux caves in France, where they've found quite a few paintings that they've carbon dated to about 30,000 years ago. A lot of them relate to to animals. Some that were anthropologists believe were about the hunt, like what animals you hunt down, which ones you avoid. And then there were some paintings also of these ancient mountain lions that used to exist in France that are now extinct. But so obviously some animals that you would want to avoid while out and about outside of your cave. Think the movie Ice Age. Anyways, also in the Lascaux caves, something really fascinating was found there. They found the first evidence of a human with an animal head, meaning the painting was of potentially a deity, which is kind of surprising to believe that 30,000 years ago they were already trying to explain life and death and everything around us through mythology. So these are the Lascaux caves. If you fast forward a little bit, we'll get to Mesopotamian art, and by a little bit I mean quite a few thousand years later. If 35,000 years, 32,000 years was way over here, I'm going to fast forward all the way to like about this person's hand. And that's how much later we start seeing evidence of civilizations coming up with art that really identifies their culture and what we call a movement. Mesopotamian art was still gods and goddesses and stuff. What we have here is a female bust, a female figure. What we believe, as anthropologists believe, is that throughout life we've definitely, as man, have obsessed over fertility and over the female figure because it represents everything that is life. So, be that as it may, we see a lot of art still to this day that represents the female figure and an obsession with such. Right around the same time, during Mesopotamia, was also the Egyptian time. You might know the ancient pyramids of Egypt and the Sphinx, and then also hieroglyphs and a lot of these deities you may have seen in popular culture. But what you have is Egyptian art, which happened about 3100 BC to about 30 BC, and it depicts a lot of like gods and also a lot of just daily occurrences like commerce and the way that they lived. If you fast forward to Greek and Hellenistic art, this happened roughly a few years. There was a little bit of overlap, but it happened about 850 BC to 31 BC. So both of those civilizations ended roughly about the same time. What we have here is, instead of drawing blocky, simplistic or stylistic characters, you can see that the Greeks definitely obsessed over perfection, so trying to capture the essence of a real human body. You can see that in male, female, and childlike figures. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, also known as the medieval times, also related to the Dark Ages. So during this time you had Byzantine, you had Romanesque, and a few other of those different ages and styles. but a lot of it had to do with religion. You can see all of the biblical references that this era provided for us. You may think that the Renaissance is very related. When I used to see this, I used to think, oh, cool, awesome, you got a lot of religious figures. But the importance of the Renaissance movement is that it wasn't just obsession over religion. It was also obsession over what the Greeks and the Egyptians had to offer. So a lot of mathematics, a lot of science, a lot of... so Renaissance means rebirth. So there was this new desire and affinity for everything that gave you information. So out of there, you got a lot of artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, people that definitely obsessed over that kind of. So yeah, science and math were just as important as art for these artists. Some would call that obsession with anything and everything to learn as philomath. So if you're a philomath, you like to kind of just gain some knowledge. So you can see all the inspiration by like that perfection that the Greeks have provided artists. And then you move up a ways, you get the Northern Renaissance with like Ik van Eyck and a few other artists that definitely had the same style and the same inspiration. Neoclassical, you can see a little bit of a difference. There's more storytelling. And then fast forward, we're going to stop here because Impressionism, when we fast forward all the way to Impressionism, now we're starting to like almost get into the 1900s. So right before and right around the Industrial Revolution. With a lot of that Industrial Revolution, you had experimentation with paints. Those paints allowed for the invention of what we have now, which is called acrylic paint. Before then, it was all oil painting. So everything that you saw with the Renaissance, and before that even, you had a lot of oil-based paints. But acrylics definitely were groundbreaking in so many ways. First of all, it's flexible. Secondly, it doesn't have issues with direct sunlight, so it doesn't change, fade, or dry or crack with direct sunlight. So you can, for the first time ever, really paint outside any time of day. You could, once it dries, you could roll up whatever surface you're painting on. Let's say it's a fabric or what you call canvas. So once you had that, then you had these painters that ran around and started painting things really fast and conceptualizing. Conceptualizing means to like come up with a cool idea that no one had really thought about before. So when you conceptualize with acrylic paint, you realize that everything that was painted before you was painted perfectly because that's all you had. It was like your only camera. But now with acrylic paint, it functions differently, it behaves differently. So why don't you try something different? In this sense, Impressionists started painting what you call impressions of objects or landscapes or people, meaning you just try to capture the essence without worrying too much about detail. And you can see that things are a little bit more blurred, a little bit more simplified. That hadn't happened before. Then you fast forward to Fauvism and Expressionism. We're talking roughly now about 1900 to 1935, so this is in the middle of Industrial Revolution, but then into World War I and World War II even. So Expressionism is a style of painting that some people were still like not really fond of. You had purist people that were more classicists. We're talking people that really preferred to look at things like Renaissance and Greek art and say, hey, that's the best kind of artwork you can make. Even those Impressionists were a joke because, I mean, who does that? So when they looked at Fauvism and Expressionism, they're like, dude, trying to paint an emotion, that's ridiculous. One of those haters was a really famous guy by the name of Adolf Hitler. He actually had thought that people that painted that way were subhuman or I'm forgetting the phrase, but anyways, he definitely jailed. It's known that he threw quite a few of these artists in jail, including authors and painters and drawers. anyone that was kind of playing around with this idea of expressing raw emotion. And a lot of the art didn't make it out of Germany. But anyways, that was in the late 1900s, that Fauvism and Expressionism. Fast forward a little bit more, and you had the most famous artist to this day. You had Pablo Picasso with Cubism. Cubism was born directly, and you could see the direct correlation to Fauvism and Expressionism. Picasso took it a step further by generating a very unique style that made everything really blocky and really geometric. His obsession came from looking at tribal African masks at an exhibit in Paris, France. He's Spanish, but he discovered a unique style that came out of very old traditional art from Africa and made it his style. So there you go, guys. Make sure that you look at other inspirations, not just your own brain. Dadaism and Surrealism. So Dadaism, it came from this idea that that art shouldn't have any rules, that you should be able to express yourself regardless. And so from that also came Surrealism. Surrealists thought that there was this subconscious that we never tapped into, and that led to war and misery. So in whatever way possible, you could try to tap into your deep inner subconscious, and the only way to do that is to allow, like, almost like an auto what do you call that? So it's like to allow your body to do what it wants to do without you really getting in the way. Dadaists definitely played with this idea by displaying anything out of context, kind of like this urinal here, which is a bathroom urinal, titled The Fountain by Marcel Duchamp. And here's some Surrealism. Surrealism, Salvador Dali. If you ever want to see some more of his stuff, we have books in the classroom related to Salvador Dali. And then from that came Abstract Expressionism. So if you really wanted to tap into your subconscious, what better way than to just let paint be paint and you just dabble in the moment. Kandinsky did a similar thing. This is Wassily Kandinsky. So we're really moving forward here in the 1940s and 1950s. And from that came pop. So pop art is just this idea of industrializing and simplifying art to generate something that is artistically founded in what people consider art. So for that you need a perfect recipe of light, space, shape, form, color, texture, value, and some principles of design as well. And lastly, at the very end, we have what we call postmodernism, which is where we are. Contemporary art just takes a combination of everything we've learned through this entire art history, and we try to mix and match it and tell new stories with it. So a lot of it isn't novel or brand new by any means, but we like to reinvent the wheel by telling it in our own way. So anyways, that's our brief history in time, and I hope it makes sense to you guys. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you.